Election season has just come to a close in Canada. So why not talk about the lawmaking politicians that we didn't get to elect? That's right, today we're talking about the senators. No, not those senators. So you know about the Senate, right? We learned about it in what, like grade 6, 7 social studies? It's a part of the government in Ottawa. We know that. And there are a bunch of senators who make laws somehow? Yeah, you remember this, right? So let's break this down a bit. Canada has a bicameral parliament. That means we have two houses, an upper house and a lower house, in the legislative branch. That's the branch that makes the laws. The lower house is probably the one you're more familiar with. That's the House of Commons. So the MPs we know you voted for a couple weeks ago. In the lower house, your elected representatives come up with, debate, and vote on bills, and after the bills get through the House of Commons, they have to go through the Senate, or the upper house of Parliament. And just like the House of Commons, the Senate has a speaker, party leaders, and committees. So what's the point of the Senate? The goal of the Senate was to facilitate sober second thought of the legislation that made it past the discussion in the House of Commons. Much like the members of Parliament, they debate, hold, and refine bills, and can even propose some of their own. The difference is that the Senate doesn't represent Canadians by population, but based on region, and specifically to give voices to underrepresented and marginalized populations. Senators were historically patrons of party members, but now come from various professional and academic backgrounds, and are highly qualified and accomplished in areas other than politics. Because they're appointed based on their professional experiences, many have criticized the Senate for being elitist. Many political parties in Canada have attempted to limit the power of the Senate by proposing elections and limiting terms, but others like that senators aren't as restricted by their parties and that they can limit policy overreach of the executive branch. So who makes up the Senate? There are 105 senators in the Canadian Senate. The Western provinces, the Maritimes, Ontario, and Quebec each get 24 senators, with Newfoundland getting 6 and each of the 3 territories getting 1 each. Great to know that Ontario and Quebec are still the center of the Canadian universe. To be a senator, you have to be at least 30 years old, a Canadian citizen, live in your own representative province, have at least $4,000, and own land worth at least $4,000. And once appointed, you have this job until you're 75. And if you think that's wild, before 1965, you took this job with you to your grave. No, seriously, you had it until you were dead. No, so I didn't write these rules, don't at me. And you and I don't get to pick these senators. That's Governor General Julie Payette's job under the advice of the Prime Minister. So in some ways, you do get to pick the people, the MPs, who help pick the person, the Prime Minister, who picks the person, the Governor General, who appoints the senators. Again, don't at me, at sections 21 to 36 of the Canadian Constitution. So you might be wondering, if the Prime Minister has a say in who gets to become senator, why are there senators who come from different parties and others with no affiliation whatsoever? Great question. Remember that it's a job for life. So there are many senators from previous administrations. But recently, prime ministers have leaned towards picking people with little to no party affiliation and act under the advice of independent advisory boards. As of today, 58 senators are independent, 29 are conservative, 9 are liberal, and 7 are non-affiliated, with 2 seats that remain to be filled. And it gets more complicated because the Senate Liberal Caucus is not the same as the Liberal Party of Canada. It's a whole thing. Canada is a democracy, but there are other officials with a lot of political power that you don't get a say in. But we can talk about the Prime Minister's Principal Secretary and the Chief of Staff in another video. In the meantime, let us know in the comments below if the Senate is important to you. When you're done, don't forget to subscribe to stay posted.